Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he barely noticed. Today was supposed to be routine patrol duty around the outer colonies. Instead, it had become the most important day in human history. The communication console beeped softly. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission on multiple frequencies. It's not from any human vessel." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. First contact. After decades of searching the galaxy, sending out signals and hoping for an answer, someone had finally responded. He walked over to Amy's station and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Put it through the main speakers," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Then a voice filled the air. It was beautiful, almost musical, with tones that seemed to carry emotions. Jake couldn't quite understand. "Greetings, children of Earth. We are the Vorthic Empire. We come in peace and friendship. We have traveled far to meet you." Jake exchanged glances with his second-in-command, Captain Helen Brooks. She had been transferred to the Defiance just 3 months ago, and her reputation for careful thinking had already proven valuable. Her dark eyes showed the same mixture of excitement and caution that Jake felt. "This is Commander Morrison of the United Earthship Defiance," Jake replied into the communication system. "We welcome you and look forward to peaceful contact." "Your words bring us joy," the alien voice responded. "We request permission to approach your vessel. We have gifts to share and much to discuss." Within minutes, 3 alien ships appeared on their sensors. They were unlike anything humans had ever built. The vessels looked almost alive, with smooth curves and a surface that seemed to shift colors in the starlight. They moved with grace that made human ships look clumsy in comparison. Dr. Lisa Kane arrived on the bridge, just as the alien ships came into visual range. She was the mission's expert on possible alien life, and Jake had called her the moment the first transmission came through. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her glasses and stared at the viewing screen. "They're beautiful," she whispered. That alien ship sent another transmission, this time with visual. The screen filled with the image of a tall, graceful being. Its skin had a soft glow, like moonlight on water. Its eyes were large and kind, and when it spoke, its voice carried that same musical quality they had heard before. "I am Ambassador Zethel of the Vorthic Empire. We have waited long to meet another species that has reached the stars. Your people show great promise." Jake found himself smiling despite his training to remain cautious during first contact situations. There was something about the alien that made him feel at ease. "We're honored to meet you, Ambassador. What brings you to our part of the galaxy?" "We are explorers much like yourselves," Zethel replied. "We travel between star systems, sharing knowledge and building friendships with other intelligent species. We have much to offer each other." Over the next several hours, Jake and his crew learned amazing things about the Vorthak. They had been traveling the galaxy for thousands of years. Their technology was far beyond anything humans had developed. They had medicine that could cure diseases that killed millions of humans every year. They had energy sources that could power entire worlds without pollution. They had ships that could travel between stars in days instead of months. Dr. Kane spent most of her time asking questions about Vorthic biology and culture. The aliens seemed happy to answer. They explained that their species had evolved on a world with 3 suns, which explained their glowing skin. They lived much longer than humans, with some individuals being over 1,000 years old. They had no wars among their own people and had not fought another species in centuries. "We believe that violence is a waste of intelligent life, Ambassador," Zethal explained. "When we meet a new species, we prefer to trade knowledge and resources. Everyone benefits from cooperation." Charles Webb, the diplomatic officer who had been rushed to the Defiance when the alien contact was confirmed, worked with the ambassador to establish formal communication protocols. Charles had spent his career preparing for this moment, studying how humans might interact with alien species. Even he seemed amazed by how friendly and helpful the Vorthik appeared to be. "They're almost too good to be true," Charles mentioned to Jake during a brief break in the discussions. Jake nodded. "That's what worries me, but so far, everything they've said checks out. Their technology is clearly advanced, and they haven't made any threatening moves." Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Hayes had arrived on the Defiance along with Charles Webb. Ryan was head of military intelligence for the outer colonies, and his job was to assess any potential threats to human space. He had been unusually quiet during the first contact proceedings, spending most of his time studying the sensor readings from the alien ships. "Commander," Ryan said, approaching Jake's command chair, "I need to speak with you privately." Jake followed Ryan to a small conference room off the main bridge. Ryan closed the door and activated the room's privacy shields before speaking. "Something's not right about those ships," Ryan said without preamble. "Our sensors are picking up weapon signatures that don't match what a peaceful exploration vessel should carry." Jake frowned. "What kind of weapons?" "That's the problem. I can't identify them. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases, but the power levels are enormous. Each of those ships could probably destroy our entire fleet." "Maybe they need powerful weapons to defend against hostile species," Jake suggested. "They've been traveling the galaxy for thousands of years. They must have encountered dangerous situations." Ryan shook his head. "It's not just the weapons. There are other systems on those ships that I can't identify. Standing equipment that's more advanced than anything we have. Storage bays that are much larger than they should need for a diplomatic mission. And there's something else." "What?" "The gifts they're offering. Dr. Kane has been analyzing the medical technology they showed us. There are components in it that she can't identify. Hidden programming that activates systems she doesn't understand." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying the gifts are dangerous?" "I'm saying I don't know what they really do. And that makes me nervous." Jake stared out the small window in the conference room. The alien ships hung in space nearby, looking peaceful and beautiful. It was hard to believe that they might be hiding something sinister. "Have you shared these concerns with Charles or Dr. Kane?" Jake asked. "I tried. Charles thinks I'm being paranoid. He says this is the most important moment in human history and we can't let fear ruin it. Dr. Kane is so excited about the medical technology that she doesn't want to hear about potential problems." Jake understood their reactions. First contact with a friendly alien species was everything humanity had hoped for. The idea that it might be too good to be true was hard to accept. "Keep monitoring their ships," Jake told Ryan. "Document everything you find, but don't take any action without my approval. If these aliens really are peaceful, we don't want to start a war through misunderstanding." Ryan nodded reluctantly. "Yes, sir. But Commander, if I'm right about this, we could be walking into a trap that we won't see coming until it's too late." As Jake returned to the bridge, he tried to push Ryan's warnings from his mind. The Vorthak seemed genuinely friendly. Their offer to share advanced technology could solve many of humanity's problems. Earth could become a paradise with access to their medicine and energy sources, but deep in his gut, Jake felt the same unease that Ryan had expressed. Something about the situation felt wrong, even though he couldn't put his finger on what it was. The aliens were too perfect, too generous, too willing to share their advanced technology with a species they had just met. Ambassador Zethel appeared on the main screen again, his glowing features arranged in what seemed to be a smile. "Commander Morrison, we would like to extend a formal invitation. Our leaders wish to establish permanent diplomatic relations with humanity. We would like to build embassy facilities on your worlds and share our technology more widely." Jake forced himself to smile back. "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity, Ambassador. We'll need to consult with our government leaders, of course. Of course, we understand the importance of proper procedures. We are prepared to wait as long as necessary. After all, we have waited centuries to find friends among the stars. A few more days or weeks means nothing to us." As the conversation continued, Jake noticed something that made his blood run cold. When Ambassador Ziethel thought the communication was muted, his expression changed completely. For just a moment, the kindness disappeared from his large eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like hunger. Jake glanced around the bridge to see if anyone else had noticed, but his crew was too busy with their various duties. Only Ryan Hayes was watching the screen with the same suspicious expression Jake felt on his own face. The future of humanity hung in the balance, and Jake was beginning to suspect that the Vorthak Empire was not what it seemed to be. 6 months had passed since first contact with the Vorthak Empire. The aliens had kept their word about being patient while humanity's leaders debated the terms of their alliance. During that time, Vorthak embassy compounds had been built on Earth and 12 major colony worlds. The aliens worked quietly within these facilities, claiming they needed time to adapt their technology for human use. Commander Jake Morrison stood in his apartment on Luna Station, watching Earth turn slowly below. The planet looked different. Now, strange lights glowed from the Vorthak embassy sites, and new construction projects dotted the continents. The aliens said they were building medical facilities and energy plants as gifts to humanity. World leaders praised the Vorthak as humanity's greatest allies, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. His communication device buzzed. It was Ryan Hayes calling from Earth's military command center. Ryan's face appeared on the screen, and Jake could see the stress in his eyes. "Jake, we have a problem," Ryan said without greeting. "I've been tracking energy readings from the Vorthak facilities. They're not building what they claim to be building." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "The medical scanners they gave us 6 months ago? They're not medical devices? They're mapping systems. Every time humans go through them, the machines record detailed information about our bodies, our genetics, even our brain patterns. The data is being sent directly to the Vorthak compounds." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "How many people have been scanned?" "Nearly 2 billion. Every major city, every colony world. They've mapped almost the entire human population." Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout Luna Station. Emergency lights flashed red, and the station's automated voice announced a priority. "Alert, all personnel report to emergency stations. Unknown vessels detected throughout human space. This is not a drill." Jake ran to the command center, where chaos had already erupted. The main display showed dozens of massive ships appearing near every major human world. They were not the graceful Vorthak diplomatic vessels that humanity had grown familiar with. These ships were enormous, dark, and covered with strange machinery that pulsed with an evil red light. Captain Helen Brooks was already at her post, coordinating with defense fleets throughout human space. Her voice was steady despite the crisis unfolding around them. "Confirmed sightings at Earth, Mars, Europa, New Angeles, Haven Colony, and 15 other worlds," she reported. "The ships are at least 10 times larger than anything in our fleet." Dr. Lisa Kane burst into the command center, her face pale with fear. She had been working with Vorthak technology for months, and Jake could see the horror in her eyes as she realized what was happening. "They lied to us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything they told us was a lie." On the main screen, reports flooded in from across human space. The Vorthak embassy compounds were transforming. The elegant buildings that had housed their diplomats were unfolding like deadly flowers, revealing massive weapon systems and defensive barriers. Within minutes, peaceful embassy sites had become fortress strongholds. Jake opened a communication. "Channel to Earth's Defense Command. This is Morrison. What's the status planetside?" General Patricia Stone's voice crackled through the speakers. She was humanity's top military commander, and Jake had never heard fear in her voice before today. "The embassy compounds have sealed themselves off," she reported. "We can't get through their barriers, and they're not responding to any communications. But Jake, that's not the worst part." "What else?" "The harvest ships have started deploying. Some kind of energy domes over major cities. London, New York, Tokyo, Beijing. Everywhere the domes touch, people are disappearing." Jake stared at the tactical display as more reports came in. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The Vorthak had used the past 6 months to map human settlements and prepare for a coordinated attack. They knew exactly where every major population center was located, where the military bases were positioned, and how many people lived in each area. Helen activated the emergency communication system that connected all human military forces. This is Captain Brooks aboard Luna Station. All defense fleets, report your status immediately. The responses came in quickly, and each one brought worse news. The human defense fleet near Earth had engaged the Harvest ships and been destroyed within minutes. The aliens' weapons were beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Energy beams that seemed to bend space itself, missiles that phased through human shields like they didn't exist, and defensive systems that adapted to every attack. Colony. Worlds throughout human space were going dark one by one. New Angeles reported massive Harvest ships descending on their cities before the transmission cut off. Haven Colony's last message was a desperate plea for help that ended in screams. Eden Prime, humanity's newest and most prosperous world, simply stopped transmitting entirely. Dr. Kane worked frantically at her research station, analyzing the data they had collected about Vorthak technology. Her hands shook as she made connections that should have been obvious months ago. The essence they mentioned in their cultural briefings, she said suddenly. They said it was their word for life energy, for the soul. I thought it was just a philosophical concept. What are you talking about? Jake demanded. The Harvest ships aren't just taking resources or conquering territory. They're processing humans. The energy domes extract something from living people and refine it into a substance they call essence. It's what powers their most advanced technology. Jake felt sick as the full horror of the situation became clear. They're not conquering us, they're farming us. Helen received a priority transmission from the outer colonies. Commander David Park's face appeared on screen, and Jake could see explosions reflecting in his eyes. Luna Station, this is the UES. Guardian at Kepler Station. We're under heavy attack by Harvest ships. They're not trying to destroy our installations. They're capturing our people and loading them onto transport vessels. It's like they're collecting livestock. The transmission cut off as David's ship was overwhelmed by alien attackers. Jake watched helplessly as another dot disappeared from the tactical display. The Guardian had carried over 3,000 crew members. Ryan Hayes contacted them from Earth's underground command bunker. The surface of the planet was no longer safe as Harvest domes continued to expand over major cities. I've got reports from inside the Harvest zones, Ryan said. The few people who escaped described processing facilities where humans are sorted and prepared for something called essence extraction. The Vorthak aren't killing people quickly. They're keeping them alive during the entire process. Jake closed his eyes, trying to block out the images that Ryan's words created in his mind. But he forced himself to focus on the tactical situation. Despair wouldn't save humanity. How many worlds have we lost contact with? He asked Helen. 37 confirmed, another dozen probably gone, but we're still hoping for communication. The Outer Rim colonies are trying to evacuate, but the Harvest ships are faster than our transport vessels. Dr. Kane looked up from her research station, with tears in her eyes. I found records in the Vorthak database they let me access. This isn't the first time they've done this. There are 17 other species listed as completed harvests, entire civilizations reduced to essence reserves. The communication system activated with an incoming transmission. Ambassador Zethel S. face appeared on the main screen, but he looked nothing like the friendly diplomat they had met 6 months ago. His glowing skin had taken on a darker hue, and his eyes held no trace of the kindness he had shown before. Humans of Earth and the colonies, he said, his musical voice now carrying undertones of cold authority. Your species has served its purpose. The mapping phase is complete, and the harvest can begin in earnest. Do not resist. Resistance only makes the essence extraction more difficult and painful. Jake stepped forward, rage filling his voice. You lied to us. You pretended to be our friends. Zethel S. expression didn't change. We told you exactly what we are. We are explorers who travel between star systems. We are traders who exchange resources. We are builders of alliances between species. All of this was true. We simply did not explain that humans would be the resource being traded. Why? Jake demanded. Why do this to innocent people? Your species produces excellent quality essence. Your emotional range and intellectual capacity create energy patterns that power our most important technologies. We have studied 17 species before you. Humans rank among the top 3 for essence purity and yield. Helen activated the fleet-wide communication system. All human forces, this is Captain Brooks. Ignore any surrender demands. Fight to the last ship. Make them pay for every human life they take. Across human space, the desperate battle continued. The few remaining defense fleets threw everything they had at the harvest ships, but human weapons barely scratched the alien hulls. The Vorthek vessels seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour, their systems adapting to human tactics and becoming more efficient at processing captured populations. Jake watched the tactical display as more worlds went dark. Humanity's greatest colonies, representing centuries of expansion and development, were being consumed like crops ready for harvest. 3 weeks had passed since the harvest began. Earth's population had dropped from 8 billion to less than 2 billion. The harvest ships worked day and night, their energy domes covering entire continents. Most of the outer colonies had gone completely silent. Dr. Lisa Kane crouched in the ruins of a Vorthek processing facility on Mars. The dome that had covered New Shanghai colony had been damaged during a desperate human attack, giving her team a chance to study what the aliens were really doing to captured humans. She wished she had never seen it. The facility was filled with rows of metal chambers, each one designed to hold a single human being. Tubes and wires connected to every chamber, carrying away a glowing liquid that pulsed with its own light. Kane had watched in horror as the process worked. Humans were kept alive and conscious during the entire extraction. Their screams were part of what made the essence so powerful. "Dr. Kane, we need to go," whispered Private Bobby Martinez, one of the few soldiers who had escaped when Mars fell. "The patrol ships will be back soon." Kane nodded, but she couldn't stop looking at the data she had stolen from the facility's computers. The Vorthak kept detailed records of every species they had harvested. The information was more terrible than she had imagined. The alien records showed that the Vorthak hadn't always been predators. Thousands of years ago, they had been a peaceful species, much like humans. But they had discovered how to harvest essence from other living beings, and the power had corrupted them completely. They had consumed their own planet's wildlife and expanded to other worlds, eventually harvesting 17 different intelligent species. Each harvest made them stronger, more advanced, more hungry for the next species to consume. Kane's communication device buzzed with an emergency transmission from Commander Jake Morrison. His voice came through, filled with static and desperation. "Lisa, where are you? We need that research data immediately. The situation on Earth is getting worse." "I'm uploading everything now," Kane replied, connecting her device to the stolen Vorthek computer. "Jake, you need to see this. The Vorthek technology can be copied. We can build our own essence extraction systems." The silence on the communication CHNL lasted for several long seconds. Kane could imagine Jake's reaction to what she was suggesting. "You're talking about doing to our own people what the Vorthek are doing to us," Jake finally said. "I'm talking about survival," Kane replied. "Their ships are powered by essence. Their weapons are powered by essence. Everything they have that makes them stronger than us comes from harvesting other species. If we want to fight them, we need the same power." Kane and her team made their way back to the hidden shuttle that had brought them to Mars. As they flew toward the outer colonies, where the human survivors were gathering, Kane continued studying the Vorthek records. The more she learned, the more frightened she became. The records showed exactly how the essence extraction process worked. It wasn't just about taking life energy from someone. The process required the victim to be conscious and aware of what was happening. Fear, pain, and desperation made the essence more potent. The Vorthak had spent centuries perfecting ways to maximize human suffering during extraction, but Kane also found technical specifications for the machines. If humans could build their own versions, they could power weapons capable of destroying Vorthak ships. The problem was that the machines required living beings to operate. Commander Morrison was waiting for her when she arrived at the hidden base on Europa. The moon's icy surface concealed one of humanity's last major strongholds, where survivors from across the solar system had gathered. The base housed nearly 50,000 people, including most of Earth's remaining military leadership. Captain Helen Brooks met Kane at the landing bay. Helen had been coordinating the evacuation of survivors from the inner colonies, and the stress showed in her face. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "How bad is it?" Helen asked as they walked toward the command center. "Worse than we thought," Kane replied. "The Vorthak aren't just harvesting us for resources. They're addicted to the process. They literally can't stop. It's like a drug that their entire civilization depends on." The command center was packed with the remaining human leadership. General Patricia Stone had escaped from Earth just before the harvest domes covered the entire planet. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Hayes had made it off Mars with critical intelligence about Vorthak military capabilities. Charles Webb, the diplomat, who had first welcomed the aliens, sat in a corner looking like he had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Jake called for attention as Kane entered the room. "Dr. Kane has made some discoveries about Vorthak technology. Lisa, tell them what you found." Kane connected her stolen data to the main display. The room fell silent as images of the harvesting process filled the screen. Several people looked away, unable to watch the horrific reality of what was happening to their fellow humans. "The Vorthak harvest essence to power their technology," Kane began, "but I've found something else. The records show that we can build our own essence extraction systems. We can create weapons powered by human essence that are capable of destroying their ships." The room erupted in angry voices. General Stone stood up, her face red with fury. "You're suggesting we become like them?" she demanded. "That we sacrifice our own people to power weapons?" "I'm suggesting we find a way to fight back," Kane replied. "Right now, we have no weapons that can even scratch their ships. In another month, there won't be any humans left to save." Ryan Hayes had been studying the technical data Kane had brought back. He looked up from his tablet with a grim expression. "The numbers are terrible," he said. "Based on these specifications, we would need to sacrifice roughly 100 humans to power weapons capable of destroying a single Vorthak ship. Their harvest fleet has over 2,000 vessels." The math was simple and horrifying. To destroy the Vorthak fleet, humanity would need to sacrifice 200,000 of their own people. Given that fewer than 3 billion humans remained alive, it would mean asking nearly 1 out of every 15 survivors to die to save the rest. "Charles," Webb finally spoke up from this corner, "there has to be another way. We can't solve this by becoming monsters ourselves." "The Vorthak tried to find another way," Kane replied. "Their records show they spent decades looking for alternatives after they first discovered essence technology. They couldn't find any other power source that was nearly as effective. Eventually, they gave up trying to be good and decided to be strong instead." Jake stood at the front of the room, looking at the faces of humanity's survivors. These people had lost everything, their families, their homes, their entire civilization. Now he was asking them to consider sacrificing even more. "We need to vote," he said finally. "This decision is too important for military command to make alone. Everyone in this room represents thousands of survivors. We need to decide together whether we're willing to pay this price." The debate lasted for hours. Some argued that becoming like the Vorthak meant the aliens had already won, even if humanity survived. Others insisted that survival was the only thing that mattered, regardless of the cost. Dr. Kane presented her research on possible alternatives. She had found references to other species that had tried to fight the Vorthak using conventional weapons. All of them had been completely harvested. She had also found mentions of species that had tried to use essence technology but had limited themselves to voluntary sacrifice. Those species had fought longer, but had still been defeated. The only species that ever successfully fought off? The Vorthak were the ones that embraced essence technology completely, Kane explained. They became just as ruthless as their attackers, but they survived. General Stone asked the question that everyone was thinking. If we do this, if we start harvesting our own people, how do we stop? How do we make sure we don't become the next Vorthak Empire? Kane didn't have an answer for that question. The alien records showed that every species that had used essence technology had eventually become addicted to it. The power was too great, too useful, too tempting to give up. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes had been monitoring communications from the remaining human outposts. He looked up from his console with urgent news. The Vorthak are preparing for their final sweep, he announced. Intelligence reports indicate they're moving their largest harvest ships toward our remaining strongholds. They want to finish the job within the next 2 weeks. Jake realized that the debate was over. There was no more time for careful consideration or moral arguments. Humanity had to make a choice right now, become monsters to survive or maintain their humanity while facing extinction. All in favor of proceeding with essence weapon development? Jake asked. The vote was closer than he had expected. 23 people voted yes, 19 voted no, and 3 abstained. Humanity's future had been decided by a margin of 4 votes. Kane immediately began working on plans for the first essence extraction facility. The technology would need to be built in secret, away from the main survivor populations. They would need volunteers who understood exactly what they were sacrificing. Within hours of the vote, the first volunteers came forward. Parents who had lost their children to the harvest. The first human essence extraction facility was built in an abandoned mining station in the asteroid belt. Dr. Lisa Kane supervised the construction, hating every moment of it. The machines looked exactly like the Vorthak devices she had studied. On Mars, cold metal chambers designed to drain the life from whoever entered them. Commander. Jake Morrison stood beside her as the final components were installed. Neither of them spoke as technicians ran tests on systems that would soon consume human lives to create weapons of war. The first volunteer is ready, reported Dr. Stephen Cross. Kane's assistant who had helped design the extraction process. His voice was barely a whisper. Mary Bell stepped forward from the group of volunteers. She had been a teacher on New Angeles Colony before the harvest ships came. Her husband and 2 children had been taken in the first wave of attacks. She had volunteered to be the first test subject for the human essence extraction system. I want to see their ships burn, she said simply. If my death can power the weapons that destroy them, then my family will be avenged. Kane felt tears running down her face as she helped Mary into the extraction chamber. The woman showed no fear, only determination. Kane had tried to explain that the process would be painful, that she would remain conscious throughout the extraction. But Mary had simply nodded and asked when they could begin. Mary, you can still change your mind, Jake said through the chamber's communication system. We can find another way. Mary smiled at him through the transparent metal of the chamber. There's no other way, Commander. You know that as well as I do. Just promise me you'll make them pay. Kane activated the extraction process with shaking hands. The chamber filled with a soft blue light as the machines began their work. Mary's expression changed as the process started, her face showing pain, but she never cried out. The essence flowed through clear tubes into collection tanks. Glowing with an inner light that seemed almost alive, the extraction took 23 minutes. When it was finished, Mary Bell was gone, and the tanks held enough refined essence to power a weapon capable of destroying a Vorthak ship. Jake stared at the glowing essence and felt sick. How many more, Lisa? How many people do we need to sacrifice to build a fleet that can fight them? Kane consulted her calculations. If we want to match their firepower, we need at least 5,000 volunteers. That would give us enough essence to power a fleet capable of engaging their harvest ships directly. The number hit Jake like a physical blow. 5,000 people? 5,000 volunteers who would walk into those chambers knowing they would never come out. 5,000 human beings transformed into ammunition for humanity's final war. Captain Helen Brooks arrived at the facility just as the second volunteer was preparing for extraction. She had been coordinating the evacuation of survivors from the outer colonies, staying one step ahead of the advancing Vorthak forces. "The aliens know we're building something," she reported. "They've increased their patrols and started scanning for unusual energy signatures. We don't have much time before they find us." The second volunteer was a soldier named Mike Thompson. He had lost his entire unit defending Europa Station. Like Mary, he showed no hesitation as he entered the extraction chamber. "Just make sure our deaths mean something," he said as Kane sealed the chamber door. Over the next 3 days, more volunteers came forward. Farmers who had watched their worlds burn, engineers who wanted their knowledge to outlive them, artists who believed beauty should survive even if they couldn't. Each extraction was recorded, each person's sacrifice noted in humanity's final records. Dr. Kane made a discovery that changed everything on the fourth day. While studying the essence extraction process, she found a way to modify the machines. Instead of killing the volunteers, the new process could put them into a state of suspended consciousness. Their essence could be borrowed rather than stolen, and they could potentially be revived after the war ended. The modified process was less efficient. It produced only about 60% of the essence that full extraction provided. But it meant the volunteers could survive. Kane called Jake immediately. "We can save them. The volunteers don't have to die. We can modify the process to preserve their lives." Jake felt hope for the first time in weeks. "How quickly can you modify the existing machines?" "Give me 2 days, but Jake, there's a problem. The reduced efficiency means we need more volunteers. Instead of 5,000, we'd need about 8,000 people to generate the same amount of essence." Jake considered the numbers. 8,000 people in suspended animation versus 5,000 dead. The choice seemed obvious, but he knew the military situation was deteriorating rapidly. They might not have time to gather that many volunteers. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Hayes contacted them from the main survivor base with urgent news. "The Vorthak have found 2 of our hidden colonies. The harvest is accelerating. They're processing entire populations in days instead of weeks." Jake made the decision to proceed with the modified extraction process. Within hours, teams of engineers were working to upgrade the machines. The first volunteer for the new process was Dr. Kane herself. "I designed these machines," she said. "I should be the one to test whether they work safely." Jake tried to talk her out of it, but Kane was determined. "Someone has to verify that the suspended extraction process actually works. It might as well be the person who understands the technology best." Kane entered the modified extraction chamber while Jake and Helen watched nervously. The process looked different from the original extractions. Instead of the harsh blue light, the chamber filled with a soft golden glow. Kane's body relaxed as her consciousness was gently separated from her physical form. The essence that flowed from the modified chamber was different too. It pulsed with warm light instead of the cold glow produced by full extraction. When the process was complete, Kane's body remained in the chamber, alive but deeply unconscious. "Vital signs are stable," reported Dr. Cross. "Brain activity shows she's in a state similar to deep sleep. The essence quality is about 60% of full extraction, exactly as predicted." Jake stared at Kane's peaceful face through the chamber window. She looked like she was dreaming. He hoped those dreams were pleasant because she might be trapped in them for a very long time. The news that volunteers could survive. The process spread quickly through the survivor communities. Applications poured in from across human space. Parents who wanted to fight for their children's future. Elderly people who felt their long lives should serve a purpose. Young adults who believed the war was worth any sacrifice. Captain Brooks supervised the construction of additional extraction facilities in hidden asteroid bases. Each facility could process 100 volunteers per day. The essence was stored in specialized containers and transported to shipyards, where human engineers worked around the clock to build weapons that could use it. The first essence powered weapon was tested on a captured Vortex scout ship. The energy beam, fueled by the borrowed consciousness of 50 volunteers, cut through the alien vessel's advanced armor like it was paper. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up half the asteroid belt. "It works," Jake said, watching the debris scatter across space. "We can actually hurt them." But their success came with a terrible cost. As more volunteers underwent the extraction process, Jake realized they were creating something that might be worse than what they were fighting. The Essence facilities looked like graveyards filled with sleeping bodies. The volunteers floated in their chambers, unaware of the world around them, their dreams powering humanity's war machine. Dr. Cross approached Jake with disturbing news about the volunteers in suspended extraction. "Commander, we're detecting unusual brain activity in some of the earlier subjects. Their dream patterns are becoming synchronized." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "They're starting to share consciousness. Their individual minds are merging into something larger. We don't know what they're experiencing or if they can be safely revived." Jake stared at the rows of extraction chambers. Thousands of volunteers floated in their golden sleep, their combined consciousness creating weapons capable of destroying Vortex ships. But they were also becoming something that was no longer entirely human. Ryan Hayes contacted them with intelligence reports from the front lines. "The Vortex are responding to our new weapons. They're adapting their tactics and building more powerful ships. They're also doing something else." "What?" "They're starting to harvest their own people. Vortex civilians are being processed in the same facilities they use for humans. Their leaders have decided that victory is worth any price, even consuming their own species." Jake realized that both sides were now locked in a spiral of escalating horror. Humans were sacrificing their consciousness to power weapons. The Vortex were consuming their own people to build stronger ships. The war had become a contest to see which species was willing to sacrifice more of its soul for victory. The terrible arithmetic of war demanded more volunteers, more essence, more weapons. But with each passing day, Jake wondered if there would be enough humanity left to save when the fighting finally ended. The extraction facilities continued their grim work. The final battle began in Earth's orbit. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, humanity's first essence-powered warship. Around him, a fleet of similar vessels hung in space, their hulls glowing with the golden light of borrowed human consciousness. Across from them, the Vortex Harvest Fleet had gathered for one last assault on humanity's homeworld. The alien ships looked different now. Their elegant curves had been replaced by harsh angles and weapon arrays. Dark red energy pulsed through their hulls, powered by the essence of their own people. "All ships report ready," announced Captain Helen Brooks from her command vessel. She had volunteered to lead the fleet, knowing this battle would determine whether humanity survived or joined the 17 other species the Vortex had consumed. Jake opened the communication channel to all human forces. "This is our last chance. Every person who volunteered their consciousness to power these ships believed we could win. Don't let their sacrifice be meaningless." The essence-powered weapons on the human ships hummed with energy that felt alive. In the extraction facilities hidden throughout the solar system, 12,000 volunteers floated in their chambers, their combined dreams creating the power needed for this final confrontation. Dr. Lisa Kane worked frantically in her research lab, even as the battle began above. She had made one final discovery that could change everything. The process that had turned the Vortex into predators could be reversed. She had found a way to break their addiction to essence consumption, but it required them to voluntarily give up the power that defined their civilization. The first shots of the battle lit up space with energy that bent reality itself. Human ships fired beams of golden light that carried the will and determination of thousands of volunteers. Vortex vessels responded with weapons powered by the screams of their own people, dark red energy that seemed to devour light itself. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Hayes coordinated the tactical assault from the command center deep beneath Luna's surface. The battle displays showed ships destroying each other in patterns that no human or alien had ever seen before. Vessels powered by consciousness itself fought with weapons that turned thought into physical force. The Vorthik command ship is holding position behind their main fleet, Ryan reported. If we can reach it, we might be able to deliver Dr. Kane's research. Jake understood what Ryan was suggesting. Someone would have to fight through the entire Vorthik fleet to reach their leadership. It would be a suicide mission, but it might offer both species a chance at redemption. The battle raged for hours. Human ships powered by willing sacrifice clashed with Vorthok vessels fueled by forced consumption. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage. For every alien ship destroyed, humanity lost one of their precious, essence-powered vessels. Dr. Kane contacted Jake during a brief pause in the fighting. I've finished the reversal process. If the Vorthik accept it, they can break free from their addiction to essence. But Jake, there's something else. The volunteers in our extraction chambers aren't just sharing consciousness anymore. They're becoming something new. What do you mean? Jake asked. Their individual minds have merged into a collective consciousness. They're still human, but they're also something more. They're aware of the battle, aware of what their sacrifice is accomplishing. They're making tactical decisions that our computers couldn't calculate. Jake realized that the volunteers had become living weapons, their combined consciousness guiding every shot fired by the human fleet. They had given up their individual existence to become part of something larger, something that existed to protect the rest of humanity. Captain Brooks led a desperate assault on the Vorthak center line. Her ship, powered by the essence of 1,000 volunteers, carved through alien formations that had seemed invincible just months before, but the cost was terrible. Each attack drained more energy from the volunteers, bringing them closer to a state from which they might never return. The Vorthak responded by throwing everything they had at the human fleet. Their command ship, a massive vessel that dwarfed anything humanity had built, began moving toward Earth. Its weapons could crack a planet's crust, and it was powered by the essence of millions of Vorthak civilians who had been sacrificed for this final assault. Ryan coordinated a strike team to reach the Vorthik command ship. Jake volunteered to lead the mission, carrying Dr. Kane's research data and a small team of volunteers, willing to deliver it directly to the alien leadership, the assault shuttle that carried. Jake's team was powered by the consciousness of 50 volunteers who had specifically requested to be part of this mission. Their essence flowed through the ship's systems, guiding it through the massive space battle toward the enemy command vessel. As they approached the Vorthak ship, Jake could see the horror of what the aliens had become. The vessel's hull was covered with extraction chambers containing Vorthak civilians. The aliens were consuming their own people in real time to power their weapons. Just as desperately as humans were using their volunteers' consciousness, the boarding action was unlike anything in military history. Jake's team fought through corridors that pulsed with stolen life energy while their own ship was guided by the borrowed consciousness of human volunteers. Both sides had become something beyond their original nature, transformed by the weapons they had chosen to wield. Jake found the Vorthak command center where Admiral Zethkar, the alien military leader, directed the final assault on Earth. The alien commander looked nothing like the elegant being humans had first encountered. His skin had turned dark from exposure to too much essence energy, and his eyes held the desperate hunger of an addict who could never get enough of what he craved. Human, Zethkar said without turning around. You have come to die with your species. I've come to offer you a choice, Jake replied, holding up Dr. Kane's research data. We found a way to reverse what you've become. You can break free from the addiction to essence. Your people don't have to be predators anymore. Zethkar finally turned to face him. And become weak like we were before? Return to being prey for the next species that discovers essence technology? You can become what you were meant to be, Jake said. The records show your people were explorers, scientists, artists. You gave that up for power, but you can choose to get it back. The alien commander stared at the data for long moments while the battle raged around them. His ship shuddered as human essence weapons carved through its defenses. On the displays, both fleets were destroying each other in a final spasm of mutual annihilation. If we accept this, Sethkar said slowly, we will be defenseless against other species who might have essence weapons. Then we'll defend each other, Jake replied. Two species that chose redemption over power. Two civilizations that decided being good was more important than being strong. Sethkar looked at his tactical displays showing the remains of his once mighty fleet. The Vorthak had conquered 17 species, but they had never faced an enemy willing to make the same sacrifices they demanded of others. Humanity had proven that any species could become predators if pushed far enough. Your volunteers, Sethkar said. Can they be saved? Jake thought of the thousands of humans floating in extraction chambers. Their consciousness merged into something that was no longer entirely individual. We hope so. But they made their choice knowing they might not come back. The alien commander made his decision. He activated the ship-wide communication system and spoke to what remained of the Vorthak fleet. All vessels, cease fire. Prepare to receive reversal protocols. The harvest ends today. The battle stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Human and Vorthak ships hung motionless in space, both fleets crippled by their mutual destruction. On both sides, commanders struggled with the choice between continued fighting and uncertain redemption. Dr. Kane worked with Vorthak scientists to implement the reversal process. The aliens who underwent the treatment lost their craving for essence, but they also gave up the advanced technology that had made them powerful. They became again what they had been before the addiction, explorers and researchers, not conquerors. The human volunteers in the extraction chambers presented a different challenge. Their consciousness had merged so completely that separating them seemed impossible. But Kane discovered something remarkable. The volunteers didn't want to be separated. They had become something new, a collective mind that existed to protect humanity. They chose to remain as they were, guardians in a state between sleep and waking. Jake stood in the memorial chamber where the volunteers rested. 12,000 people floated in golden light, their individual dreams woven together into a shared consciousness that watched over human space. They could speak when needed, offering guidance and wisdom, but they would never return to individual existence. Captain Brooks worked with former Vorthak commanders to establish new colonies where both species could rebuild. The aliens helped restore the worlds they had damaged, using their knowledge to heal rather than harvest. It would take generations to repair what the war had destroyed, but both species were committed to the work. Years passed. Human and Vorthak children grew up together on worlds that had once been battlegrounds. They learned the history of the Essence War not as entertainment but as warning.